Goodbye, and welcome to Doctor Who Exactly. The year is 2011, and I don't remember what happened in 2011, aside from Doctor Who Series 6 airing in 2 parts. I still don't know why they did that, but Stephen Moffat reworking the formula? Maybe they didn't have enough time and budget constraints for an entire series in one go. Maybe. I don't know how these things work. I'm not a televisionist. So today we're talking about the first Neil Gaiman episode penned by Neil Gaiman, which is how these things work. The Doctor's Wife. Little trivia, Jonathan Nathan Turner used to have a running gag for himself that he would call episodes The Doctor's Wife, to throw people off, to make them believe that his thing that he was trying to keep secret was actually called The Doctor's Wife. So if leaks came out, then he knew who leaked it, because nobody would ever write an episode called The Doctor's Wife until we were in 2011, and boy howdy. Hang on. Hi, I really like Neil Gaiman. He's one of my favourite, more prolific writers out there. American Gods is a classic. The Ocean at the End of the Lane is one of my personal favourites. You can't say a bad word about Sandman, really. It's like the quintessential thing that, you know, aside from Watchmen and things like that, it put graphic novels, like make comics serious, that people started going like, maybe these picture books may be slightly more serious than we thought beforehand, and it's more than just Batman punching the lights out of the Joker. So having Neil Gaiman write an episode of Doctor Who, it was a little bit of a fanboy dream come true for me. He only has done the one since, and it's too bad because nowadays he's mostly involved with producing his own stuff, making American Gods a television series, getting Good Omens finally brought out into the world, and yeah, good on him, but I kind of wish he'd go back to more smaller scale stuff, to be honest, because yeah, I just kind of miss stuff like this, because boy, isn't The Doctor's Wife just brilliant. I'm just gonna gush about this episode. It's perfectly, and I use that word quite a lot in the last few recordings I've made, The Doctor's Wife is pretty much perfect. It only suffers from a few things that have to do with budget, and that's not Neil Gaiman's fault, and that's not really the show's fault, and this hat might be slightly too small. And the issues with the budget are not that big that the audience at home noticed them. So we'll address those when we get to it, but in the meantime, let's talk about The Doctor's Wife. So we start off the episode proper with these weird patchwork people who are like all humps in the back and strange thick arms and quilts stitched together, and we have this lady, Idris, and Idris looks perfectly normal, except she's gonna get her soul sucked out. Sounds very painful. And then they describe it. Oh yeah, this is gonna be very painful. Right. So then we get the first bit of showcasing that Neil Gaiman really loves his Doctor Who, because this man has been around a bit longer than I have. So he's seen a little bit more of the classic show than I have when he was in his formative years. So in the War Games, they have these cubes, and they use these cubes to send messages between Time Lords. And the Doctor receives one of these cubes in this episode, and Neil Gaiman put that in there. It's just, oh yeah, get off your high cloud, you nerd. We know you know things. You don't need to make a reference to everything ever. Right, so we're introduced to a character the Doctor once knew called the Corsair, who was supposed to be like this gentleman adventurer, except like rebel without a cause, and sometimes a lady adventurer. Always tattooed with the same kind of tattoo that the third Doctor had when he was showering in his first episode. Okay, Neil Gaiman, we get it. You know things. Stop referencing. We're only 5 minutes into this, okay? Maybe a bit longer. So the Doctor, Amy and Rory. By the way, Rory, one of my favourite companions. He's always lumped together with Amy and everybody always like gushes about how Amy is brilliant and gorgeous and fantastic. But Rory is my favourite of this era because I love characters, companions that give the Doctor a little bit of grief. He needs to be heckled, the Doctor. The Doctor is just high and mighty, and every now and then he just needs to be brought down a peg, even though it might be just a snarky comment here or there. This is why we have excellent companions such as Visla Turlough, Nardole, Donna, and of course Rory Williams. I always feel like he brings a dynamic to this TARDIS team that, you know, if it just been Amy for all the years that Clara hadn't been on yet, then I think it would not have worked quite as well. Own personal opinion, I also know people that really don't care about Rory. You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. So the Doctor receives a message from the Corsair and they go outside of the known universe, which they do with great difficulty, as the Doctor puts it. The last time he did that, the TARDIS ended up lifeless all the way back in 2006 in The Rise of the Cybermen. And guess what? Now we're in a little bubble universe that's attached to a bigger bubble universe, except it's not attached because the Doctor can't do similes and metaphors properly. So they're in this little pocket dimension and it only has the one planet, asteroid on it, planetoid, asteroid called House. And the Doctor and his companions are accosted by a crazy lady that we saw earlier on, and she rambles and she goes mad, and this is where we've already should have pegged what was going on, because you know what the episode describes: the Doctor's wife and the TARDIS, energy leaving the TARDIS and entering this lady. But for the ones that are slowly uptake among us, like me, yeah, this episode takes its time to introduce us to her. The Doctor gets introduced to the Patchwork people and to House, who is voiced by the lovely Michael Sheen. Michael Sheen is a lovely man who has a lovely voice and just a lovely angelic visage, and here he just gives such a bastard of a bastard courted bastard with a bastard feeling of a bastard of a performance. Ooh, he's so good in this. I love him. Don't tell Michael Sheen I love him. So the thing is that House feeds upon TARDISes as his entire shtick, and he's been luring TARDISes and Time Lords here for so many years. And he used one of the hypercubes to lure the Doctor there. And when the Doctor says he's the last of the Time Lords, House decides to take the TARDIS instead of, you know, feeding upon it. And the Doctor sent Amy and Rory back earlier on because he needed them to be safe. Great mistake. Great mistake. Obviously. Classic Doctor. So the Doctor's left with Idris and he finally figures out who she is. She has to make the warping noise, you know, this one, in order for him to get like, you're the TARDIS. And then they start bantering and arguing like an old married couple, and you know what? It makes perfect sense because in a way they are an old married couple. They've known each other for so many centuries, and now they finally get to vocalise all the grievances with one another, despite the fact that they love each other. And this is very weird to talk about a fictional time machine with a personality and an alien shapeshifter of sorts. Doctor Who's weird. So House is tormenting Amy and Rory, and you know, he's sending them through corridors. It feels a little bit on the nose, like this is Doctor Who. We've got to have them running through corridors. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Idris find the Patchwork people dead because they've run out of energy because the House is no longer there to keep them alive. And the Doctor finds out, you know, that Corsair, like the other Time Lords, is dead. And now he's mad. So he and Idris, they make a makeshift TARDIS console out of several deceased TARDISes. And he doesn't think of them as machines at first until she says, like, oh, I see many of my sisters. And he's like, oh, well, didn't think of that. Yeah, every single last one of those TARDISes was alive. So basically he's making like a Frankenstein's creature of a console, putting things together and just hoping he will get to his TARDIS. So, with a bit of luck and a bit of contrived, you know, plot writing, because, you know, in the end everything has to end up well, otherwise we don't have a series to go back to. The Doctor ends up in the TARDIS after Idris has contacted Amy and Rory, and I love that she doesn't know which one of them is the pretty one. So she calls Rory pretty. I love this. It's brilliant. And they end up in one of the old TARDIS consoles. And here's a note. This TARDIS console was the 10th Doctor's TARDIS and Christopher Eccleston's 9th. It was supposed to be an older TARDIS console, but there wasn't a budget in the series at this point to make or remake one of the older TARDIS consoles, like the 4th or the 3rd or anything that's similar like this. Nowadays, they have the basic classic TARDIS console they have. They made this for an adventure in space and time, and they redressed the set a little bit for Dave's Doctor, and they reused it again for the Joe Doctor's TARDIS in Fugitive Doctor June. But they didn't have the money or time at this point. It's a shame. But apparently they kept around the 10th Doctor's TARDIS long enough, because it was still a set at this point, and they were supposed to break it down, but they hadn't broken it down yet because this episode was coming up. So that means that this set got broken down after this episode. That's a shame, because I like the 10th Doctor's TARDIS. It's very steampunky, and the good kind. Not slap some gears on it and call it steampunk. Just, you know, barely held together with pieces of string, that kind of stuff. So the Doctor managed to trick House into resetting them into the proper TARDIS console, the one that the series is using at this point. And then Idris dies, and because she dies in the console room, there's only one place the energy can go, which is into the Time Vortex engine, which is where House is. And then the TARDIS proceeds to eat House. Like, this is the only interpretation I can think of. She consumes him because he's smaller on the inside. Oh my god, this is just... Oh my gosh, I lost it the first time I saw this. This is great. This is so This is so like... Yeah, you didn't really need to figure out a way to beat the bad guy. Just, you know, have the bad guy defeat himself. That's great. And then we get the Doctor's last words with the TARDIS, and it's quite sad. It's like the first time he gets to properly talk to her, and the last time, because otherwise the series can't go on proper. And she says hello. And the first thing she said to him was goodbye. Because tenses are hard. The only thing that bothers me about the ending of this episode is we get one of those prophecies attached to it, because Stephen Moffat took a note from Russell T Davies, and oh yeah, here's some prophetic lines that will come back in the future, but they don't make any sense now. I don't like those kind of things. Could they just sort of... And so many episodes in the New Who series do this. I can't fault this episode for that. Yeah, so I skipped over a few things, like Nephew was an Ood, You had auntie, uncle, the patchwork people, and nephew was an ood. He was supposed to be an actual Frankenstein's monster of sorts, of random creatures stitched together. But again, budget constraints kind of forced their hand, like, Neil, we only have these monster suits, pick one. And Neil said, ood. And granted, the ood looks particularly scary with its glowing green eyes. I think it works better than the glowing red of the rabbit or, you know, the beast-infected ood. Green just it made him look more malevolent, I suppose. And yeah, what can I say about this episode? It's very high stakes, but very low budget at the same time. It's a high concept, and it really works well with the things it has. Out of Matt Smith's run, this is one of the better ones out there. And it's definitely one of the best of Series 6, which we might not talk about. Let's not talk about Series 6 any further for any time soon. Right, so please let me know in the comments down below if you disagree with me, if you agree with me, and, you know, we're gonna do another rewatch soon, so I'll see you. Hi!